The alignment began at 3:47 a.m. on the winter solstice. I know the exact moment because every clock in the lighthouse stopped simultaneously. Not just stopped, they all began running backward. Time itself was becoming unstable as the barrier between worlds grew thin enough to tear. I had spent the previous 6 days preparing. The explosives were in place around the foundation stones, dynamite purchased from a mining supply company, along with more exotic materials I had synthesized using instructions from one of the ancient texts. The detonator sat on the desk beside me, a simple switch that would end everything. All I had to do was press it. But I found myself hesitating, my hand hovering over the switch as the lighthouse began to shake. Not from any earthquake, but from something else, a vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. From the ground, from the air, from inside my own skull. Through the lighthouse windows, I watched the ocean transform. The water was rising, but not in any natural way. It was pulling upward in defiance of gravity, forming massive columns that reached toward the sky. And within those columns, I could see shapes moving. Vast forms ascending from the depths. The sky had changed too. The stars that should have been invisible in the pre-dawn darkness were blazing with impossible brightness, and they were moving. Actually moving across the firmament, sliding into new positions, forming patterns that hurt to perceive. The alignment was completing itself before my eyes. I heard voices outside. The people from Innsmouth had come. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, gathering on the rocks around the lighthouse. They were chanting in a language that predated human speech, their voices harmonizing with the vibration that filled the air. This was it. The moment of choice. Press the switch and destroy the gateway, killing myself and everyone gathered here. Or do nothing and watch as beings from outside our reality stepped fully into our world. But then something happened that I had not anticipated. The door to the lighthouse opened. I spun around, my hand still on the detonator, and saw her standing there, Dr. Sarah Chen. Or what had been Dr. Sarah Chen. She was alive, but changed. Her skin had taken on a faint translucence, and her eyes glowed with the same sickly green light I had seen in the statue's crystalline eyes. She moved with an unnatural grace, as if gravity affected her differently now. "Don't," she said, and her voice echoed with harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech. "Please, let me show you what I've seen." "You're dead," I whispered. "You drowned. I was transformed," she interrupted, moving closer. "When I descended into the ruins, when I found the alcoves and saw what lay beyond, I made a choice. I chose to understand, and they showed me everything. The 14th alcove was never meant for death. None of them were. The keepers didn't die, not really. They were changed, evolved, given the capacity to perceive reality as it truly is, not filtered through the limitations of human consciousness." She reached out her hand toward me. Through her translucent skin, I could see structures that were not quite bones, geometries that existed in more dimensions than 3. "Come with me," she said. "One last descent. Let me show you what lies at the true heart of the complex. What none of the other keepers ever reached because they were too afraid. There's a choice beyond the binary you think you face. Not open or destroy. Not submit or resist. But transform." "Transform into what?" I asked, though I could already guess the answer. "Into something that can survive in both worlds. A bridge, a translator. Humanity needs witnesses who can help them understand what's coming. If the gateway opens without preparation, without guides, the shock will destroy human civilization completely. But if there are those who can mediate, who can help humanity adapt, you want me to become a monster?" Sarah's transformed face showed something that might have been sadness. "I want you to become something more than human, to evolve. Isn't that what we've always done as a species? Adapted to new circumstances. This is just the next step." The lighthouse shook violently. Through the windows, I could see the water columns growing larger, more solid. Something massive was surfacing. Multiple somethings. The ocean was giving birth to titans. "You have perhaps 5 minutes," Sarah said. "After that, the alignment will be complete. The barrier will fall whether you destroy the gateway or not. It's too late to stop it, but you can still choose how you face it, as a human about to be rendered obsolete and insignificant, or as something new, something that might actually matter in the cosmos that's about to reveal itself." I looked at the detonator, then at Sarah, then out at the rising shapes in the ocean. She was right about one thing. It was too late to stop it. Even if I destroyed this gateway, there were others. The inscriptions had hinted at them, thresholds scattered across the world's oceans, weakening simultaneously. I could destroy this one point, but the awakening was global, unstoppable. "Show me," I heard myself say. "Show me this third option." Sarah smiled, and in that smile I saw both horror and hope. "Follow me. And whatever you do, don't close your eyes. You need to see all of it." We descended through the lighthouse and out into the night. The cultists from Innsmouth parted to let us pass, their chanting never faltering. Some of them were changing too, I realized. Their transformations were less advanced than Sarah's, but visible. Humanity was already evolving, adapting to the new reality being born. We entered the ocean. I had no diving equipment this time, but I found I didn't need it. The water felt different, thicker, more supportive. I could breathe it like air, though my lungs burned with each inhalation. Sarah led me down through the ruins, past the alcoves with their transformed keepers. Not dead, I understood now, but sleeping, dreaming, waiting for this moment. Past the chamber with the statue and the windows showing other times and places, deeper than I had ever gone before. We came to a door, not a physical door, but a membrane between realities. It shimmered with colors that had no names, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Or perhaps my heartbeat was synchronizing with it. "Beyond this," Sarah said, "is the heart of their realm. The space between spaces where they have waited. If you pass through, you will be changed permanently. There's no going back. But you will understand. You will see the pattern underlying all reality, and you will be able to help humanity navigate what comes next. And if I refuse, if I go back up and press the detonator, then you die. The gateway here collapses, but the other gateways open anyway. Humanity faces the awakening alone, unprepared, and civilization collapses within a generation. Billions die, not from violence, but from madness, from the inability to process what they're seeing. At least some of them might survive if there are guides. Bridges. People who can translate between the old world and the new. The water around us was brightening. The alignment was reaching its peak. Through the membrane door, I could see shapes moving. Patient. Waiting. They had waited millions of years. They could wait a few more seconds for my decision. I thought about Edmund, about all the keepers who had come before. They had documented, witnessed, and ultimately refused to cross this threshold. They had chosen to remain human, even if it meant dying with their sanity fractured. But what if they had simply been too afraid? What if the path forward required courage of a different kind? Not the courage to resist, but the courage to change. I reached out and touched the membrane. The sensation was indescribable. Like every nerve in my body firing at once, like my consciousness expanding to fill spaces it had never known existed. I felt my physical form beginning to shift, to reconfigure according to principles that human biology had never developed. And I saw them, not as I had seen them before, but as they truly were. Not monsters, not gods, simply beings who existed on a scale and in dimensions that human perception couldn't naturally process. They were alien, yes. Incomprehensible, yes. But not evil. Just different. Vastly, terrifyingly different. And they showed me the truth. The real reason for the cycle of keepers, for the careful selection across centuries. They needed translators. Every time they had awakened in previous epochs, the dominant species of the time had gone extinct from the shock of contact. Humanity was different, more adaptable, more resilient, but they still needed bridges. Individuals willing to transform, to become something that could exist in both realms and help mediate the transition. The 13 keepers had been tests, trials to see if humanity could produce individuals capable of making this choice. The first 12 had failed, not through weakness, but through an excess of loyalty to their original form. I was the 13th, the completion of the cycle, the one who would either accept transformation or prove that humanity was incapable of evolution beyond its current limitations. I pushed through the membrane. The transformation was agonizing and ecstatic in equal measure. I felt my DNA rewriting itself, felt new senses awakening, felt my consciousness expanding into dimensions I hadn't known existed. I was becoming something new, not human, not other, something between, something unprecedented. And with my new senses, I perceived the full scope of what was happening. All across the world, the gateways were opening. In the depths of the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, massive forms were rising. Cities that had been sleeping were awakening. And with them, others like me were transforming. Not many, perhaps a few hundred across the entire planet. But enough. Enough to serve as bridges. I saw the future stretching ahead. Years of chaos as humanity struggled to adapt. Wars fought not with weapons, but with competing interpretations of reality. Millions who would retreat into madness rather than accept the new paradigm. But also, adaptation, evolution, humanity changing, as it always had when faced with impossible circumstances. And I saw something else, something the others themselves might not have fully understood. By creating bridges like me, by allowing human consciousness to merge with their own alien perceptions, they were changing too. The fusion was not one way. Humanity's resilience, creativity and chaos were seeping into their ancient, ordered consciousness. This was not an invasion, it was a collision of realities, and from that collision, something entirely new was being born. I opened my eyes, all of them, including the new ones that perceived in spectra beyond visible light, and looked back toward the surface. The lighthouse was collapsing, not from my explosives, but from the strain of the energies flowing through its foundation stones. But it didn't matter anymore. The threshold didn't need a marker now. It was everywhere. Sarah floated beside me, smiling her strange new smile. "Welcome," she said. "Welcome to what comes next." We rose together toward the surface, toward the world that was no longer quite the same world. The stars were settling into their new configuration. The alignment was complete, and reality itself was being rewritten according to principles that combined the old ways with something new. I broke the surface to see dawn breaking over an ocean that had never existed before. The water was alive with luminescence. The sky showed stars that were simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. And on the shore, I saw them, the transformed and the unchanged, standing together, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. I would help them. That would be my purpose now. Not a keeper of secrets, but a translator of realities, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it was becoming. The lighthouse was gone, collapsed into the sea, but I had its journal, all the journals of all the keepers, their record of the long wait, the slow weakening of the barrier, the inevitable arrival of this moment. And now I would write the next chapter, not as a warning, but as a guide, for the others who would follow, for the millions who would need to learn how to see with new eyes, think with expanded minds, and survive in a cosmos that was no longer safely distant, but immediately, terrifyingly present. The 13 keepers before me had documented the end of the old world. I would document the beginning of the new one. This is my last entry as fully human, and my first entry as something more. The stars are right. The deep ones rise, and we rise with them, transformed, terrified, but alive. The threshold has been crossed. There is no going back. And perhaps, just perhaps, That's not the tragedy we always thought it would be. Perhaps it's simply evolution. The next step. The jump from one state of being to another that all species must eventually face. We stand now on the shore of a new reality. Some will drown in its depths, but others will learn to swim in stranger waters than any ocean Earth ever held. I look at my hands, still recognizably hands, but changed in ways I'm only beginning to understand, and I know that I made the right choice. Not for everyone, but for me. And perhaps that's all any of us can do when faced with the impossible. Choose not between good and evil, but between known limitations and unknown possibilities. I chose possibility. The cosmos is watching to see what we make of it.